Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is you see fit to ingratiate us with your attention. I'm joined this morning by the Mike Jones and the Dr. Charles Alexander. This is a somber morning for us because we are grappling with the ascension of the one of the most first-rate individuals that chose politics as a way to embody and make this world a better place. Many of you all know that on July the 16th, the Honorable William L. Clay Sr. ascended. Not the picture that was shown by Black Enterprise Online. That was his son, Lacy Clay, but the Bill Clay. Uh, and we have the benefit of learning at the feet on a regular basis of the Mike Jones, who knew and worked with and was in community with and was in family with um, Mr. Clay. My mother-in-law was his academic liaison for a scholarship that he had in St. Louis. So we've had quite a few interactions with him. But I have a simple question this morning for Mike Jones, and that is who, in fact, was William L. Clay Sr.?
That is a complex question that doesn't have a simple answer. Particularly, doesn't have a simple answer if you are a practicing professional politician who happens to be 76 years old himself, and Bill was 94. Uh, I would, and 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 I phrase it like this: Miles Davis once said that you could sum up the history of jazz in four words: Louis Armstrong and Charlie Parker. You could say that also about the political history, Black political history in St. Louis. You could sum it up in four words: Jordan Chambers and Bill Clay. Period. Everybody else is below that, and I kind of look at both of them the way I've learned over the years to ultimately how I evaluate uh, athletes, basketball players, musicians. You know, I put I put the elite in two categories. There are great musicians and great ball players, and then there's a much smaller subset of great ball players or musicians that are also transformational. That because they played the way they played, did what they did, the game changed. They were game changers. That and uh, Jordan Chambers preceded Bill Clay, but Bill Clay uh, wasn't just uh, quote a great politician in practice. He was a transformational figure in St. Louis politics, not just Black St. Louis politics. He like Jordan Chambers, defined and was a major force in the political ecosystem. So whether you were Black, white, uh, wanted to be the governor, a mayor, whatever, you had a bond issue you were trying to get passed, whatever it was, you had to come by Bill Clay. You had to come by before him, Jordan Chambers. So that was the shadow that they cast on it, and I don't mean shadow from a negative standpoint. I'm just talking about they took up that much space. Okay, and there was ultimately nothing that they didn't touch. And I would say from the late 30s to the early 60s, Jordan Chambers transitioned in 1963. There would be something that you would hear, whether it was a white politician or a black politician, even a black politician talking to a white politician about something. The white politician, the black politician, whoever it was, they would say, "Have you talked to Pops?" That was Jordan Chambers' nickname. From the late 60s to the mid 90s, no matter what you were doing in St. Louis, somewhere in that conversation that you were having, somebody was going to say, "Have you talked to Bill yet? What did the congressman say?" And the most amazing thing about that is he didn't have to be in the room. He didn't even have to know what y'all was talking about. Okay, he could be completely unaware of whatever the topic was, and inside of the conversation that he knows nothing about, somebody is going to say, "Well, you know what? We're going to have to run this by Bill." And that's what it means. What's the phrase they use in basketball? That was the gravity that he had. Okay, now he was not the only apex political predator. There was it. But if we were a galaxy, he was the sun. Okay, the rest of us planets orbited around him. He didn't orbit around nobody. Okay, so
let me
that
ask
would be
let me ask you this, Mr. Jones. How did he get there?
well.
I know he was committed. He spent over 100 days in jail for for his commitments and fight for civil rights. But how did he get to have that level of influence?
Well, Bill, like all of us, Congressman was a man of his time. One of the things that I have, my takeaway when I look at black politics, and this is across the board, but St. Louis and Congressman Clay would not be an exception. That post World War II, and it's probably true before that, but I have not ventured to go back further, and because I'm not a historian or anything like this, it was for my own edification. And it was evident that black politicians were incubated by black protest movements. Congressman Clay was a civil rights activist. I mean, a militant civil rights activist before he ever was an elected official. And then and a generation separates us. He was a freshman in St. Louis U, one of the first black students admitted to St. Louis U the year I was born. So literally, there's 18 years apart. So we share a space, but we are also incubated at different times. And so if you're in my generation, it was the Black Student Movement, the Black Power movement. But again, all of these are black protests, black advancement movement, and that shaped your politics. So he goes into politics the same way that I went into politics, as a change agent, as advancing the interests of the black community. That was that's the driver. And so there's no separation between advancing the black community and your politics. I mean, so at one point, I think the Post-Dispatch had quoted, and he was extraordinary firepoint. I mean, like he talked about Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford like they had tails. Okay, and but and he would say, I didn't get elected to represent everybody. I got elected to represent the people that don't get represented. Okay, so he was. When I talk about being a black politician, he was a black politician, not a politician who happened to be black. Okay, or an elected official that happened to be black. So coming out of that post-World War II era through civil rights, the Black student movement, Black Power movement, that was the incubator. That was the driver. That's what attracted you to politics or brought you to it. And you did it for, I think, a lot of the same, everybody did it a lot for the same reason. You look around and what are ways to effectively try to control and impact your environment. And, depending on how you built, you start looking at it and you say politics is basically about the allocation of resources. And ultimately, just like the song in Hamilton, you want to be in the room where that happens. Okay, period. It ain't no more because if you can be in the room where it happens, it won't happen to you. You'll happen to it. Okay, so that is the drive.
You should happen if you are full-bodied, as you all were.
Yeah, well, but you would do with the power, the need and desire to control and influence the environment is what brought you to it. I mean, first of all, it was a hard business, man. I mean, it ain't,
Mr. Jones,
even to this day,
Mr. Jones, could you go back?
About going
Mr. Jones,
yeah.
I need you to go back to where you said it's a hard business to come back because you broke up a little bit.
Okay, I said it's a hard business, man. This is it's like, are you sure you want to do this? Okay, and because and one of the things that I will regularly tell people now, if somebody says, "Well, I'm thinking about, I want to go into politics," I ask two questions. I've asked a question and I make a statement. The question is, what are you trying to get done that you need to do this, to be this, to do? And if they tell me, well, nothing, I said, then you ain't got no business doing this because you're going to get eat up. Okay, you won't make it.
Lord.
And then the thing I tell them, if you go do it, the first thing you need to do is quit going to Sunday school because there's nothing you're going to learn in Sunday school that's going to help you do this. Because this game got rules, but there ain't none of them in the rules they teach you in Sunday school. And the game is the game, okay? So I mean, so if you ain't built for this, you shouldn't mess with it.
And we keep sending individuals that are not built for this. As you look at the first congressional district, which is the district that Mr. Clay represented for over 30 years. I mean, I have to ask ourselves, of course, we have a junior representative there with no experience under his belt at the congressional level. To what extent is that advocacy being waged and leveled on behalf of the
Well, Larry, you heard me, you and Charles have heard me use this phrase, and I said the congressman was a product of his times. Okay, a black elected official today is a product of their time. And I and I'm trying not to editorialize, so I'm gonna say I'm using this term descriptively. Today's black politicians are what I call entrepreneurial politicians. Again, if you were in the preceding generations, you were movement politicians. Okay, what brought you to politics was the movement.
When we look at Marion Barry,
What brings
Marion Barry and those,
I mean, put it like this: everybody you gonna name,
right,
movement politician.
right.
Okay, that's what they were doing before they showed up in this space. They were in that space, and now our politics are black elected officials of the day are just like white elected officials. They're careerists, they're entrepreneurs. They don't make them bad people, but their driver is not that. It's a career thing, and in that construct or that context, black people don't or become just another interest group. They don't become the purpose for you being there. So you will you won't hear a black politician of this day ever say, "Oh, I can't do that." Okay, we can't. Yeah, I'm black. I can't. I can't do that. You black politicians, they get asked stupid stuff by white politicians because they're not grounded in anything. And I can tell you, in 4 decades of doing this, and I'm sure Congressman Clay would tell you the same. I've never had a white politician ask me nothing stupid because they understood, well, he ain't gonna do that. Ain't no point in me messing up the relationship by asking him about that because this is a space. Think of it like in the movie or the other one, when guys like Luciani say, "Well, you're gonna have to talk to Bumpy about that because that's across 110th Street, and we ain't got nothing to do with yeah, our stuff. Yeah, they all of that, but our stuff stops at 110th Street. Okay, if you want to know about that, you're gonna have to talk to Bumpy, and you're gonna have to talk to Frank. Okay, and there was a level of respect based on the integrity that these uh, black political leaders had. Now, I'm not saying they was Boy Scouts, so I'm not talking. When I say integrity, I mean the dictionary definition of integrity, the way engineers refer to integrity about a building or a structure. That means it is what it is, and you can stand in it and be safe. Why? Because it is what it is. When a building gets condemned, it gets condemned because it lacks structural integrity. I would suggest our politics today looks like politics, but it lacks the structural integrity that it historically had. And therefore, it's not safe or reliable.
Dr. Alexander,
So,
are you listening to this?
Absolutely.
And are you hearing what this man is saying?
Absolutely.
All right.
That's
What are
why
you?
we call him the Mike Jones.
Yeah, that's why we call him. That's why he is the Mike Jones. I would have you go ahead and opine, and I'm sure you have a burning question based off of what we
yeah, go ahead.
our comment.
I do. And this gets to uh, both who Congressman Clay was and people's understanding or lack thereof of what political science, what politics, what those things are, and and also your comment with regard to uh, him coming to this place from the movement. Um, my thought would be that many people, including people whose lives, um, even including people whose lives track more directly with his in terms of the age cohort, didn't necessarily understand, didn't necessarily understand that. And one of the things that I've always had a trouble with, that I've always had a problem with, excuse me, is that I've found that there are too many Black people who think the movement happens somewhere else. And so I guess my question is, you know, whether as someone from the movement or, that movement person as a politician, do you think, or yeah, well, do you think that Black St. Louis really understood who he who he was and what we had?
Uh, yes and no. Okay, and I'll uh, Bill Clay didn't change really that much in his lifetime. I changed a lot in his lifetime. Okay, I went. Sylvester Brown called me, and he writes for the St. Louis American. I guess he's writing something, and he asked me, was I politically active in 1968? And I said, yeah, but not like you think. In 1968, I was a freshman, sophomore in college. Okay. Bill Clay is running for Congress. Bill Clay is running as a radical Democratic liberal by any standard that you. I said, but I wasn't interested in his race because in 1968, I'm to the left of Mao Zedong. Okay, so fundamentally, we talking about the revolution. They talk about getting elected. I said, so there was this generational schism. Now, I say, as I got older and I grew up more, I started to understand, yeah, we need a revolution, but since that ain't gonna happen, you go to work over here trying to make a difference if you're interested in advancing the welfare of Black people. And I would say the context of that, while people didn't all get the nuances, uh, uh, one night, 1975, Elbert is running for president of the Board of Aldermen, and we're in the Southern Kitchen at like 12, midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. Ain't nobody in there but me, Elbert, and a couple of winos, and we sit down and we're talking to this brother, and we eating, we buying something, and he started talking to us about politics because he knew who Elbert was. And he's telling, and again, one of those insightful things, he said, yeah, I know what I am now, but I got a master's degree in this, and that's before I started drinking. So anyway, we got to talking about Congressman Clay. And at that point in my life, I had a critique about everybody, okay? I like the high school player that could tell you what the pros was doing wrong, okay? So, and the old brother, he just looked at me and he smiled and he said, everything you said about him could be true. And even if it is, it don't matter. Because if he needs one vote to get back to Washington and I got it, he can start packing now. So that's who Bill Clay was to that generation. Those stands, he didn't have a brand, he had a reputation. We talked about that last week. His reputation preceded him. So in the context of his generation, he's that dude. Okay, he was on the board of aldermen and went to jail for 112 days about Jefferson Banks. Okay, uh, uh, quite a few elected officials. Lewis Ford, who went on to be a state representative, he was in jail with Bill. Benny Goins went to jail. So this they was not joking. Okay, so black people got that. If they didn't understand nothing about politics, didn't know nothing about that, they knew they could trust him. Now, my view at 25, looking at a William Clay in his 40s, who was a congressman, I'm looking at him in that moment for me like Marlo looking at Avon, okay? But that's because that's all I know right now. And then you get in the game yourself. You get in the business, you start to understand. Wait a minute, you get in the league, you leave college, and you get in, and you know what it means to be a pro now, okay? And then all of a sudden, everything changes for you, okay? It, and you know whatever it looks like from the outside ain't the way it is on the inside. So there's the game within the game, and you learn that to get good at this, you got to master the game within the game. So everything shifts for you, and so the older I got, the smarter and better he became. We we had a conversation once about 4 or 5 years ago. I called him. I wanted to talk to him about a couple of things from a historical context, and I had this idea. And I was in D.C. and I went to his house to see him. And I had this idea of an evening with Bill Clay. We do it at the History Museum, and they would tape it because I had kind of talked to them. Because I want to talk to him about stuff, ask him stuff that only another politician, maybe younger than him, would ask. And a reporter would never ask him, or a private citizen, because you don't know this. You know, it's the stuff you have to be in it. It's like a lawyer or a psychologist. If you don't do this, there's stuff you'll never know to ask. If you do it too, you're curious about how somebody else sees it, who you have a high regard for their ability. But we had a moment we was laughing, and he said, "No, I think I'm too old for that at this point. I don't know if I can pull that off." And then he said, "Mike, you should have thought of this 20 years ago." And I told him, "Bill, I wasn't old enough 20 years ago." Oh, okay. I had to get to be 70-something to have this conversation with you. Because 20 years ago, I didn't know enough to be sitting here to want to talk to you about then and how we got here and what was you looking at and how did you see that? Because I know, and you know, and one of the things we talked about was I said you were Bill Clay when I got in the game. You were always that guy. My whole time. I said, but you wasn't always Bill Clay. So tell me about Jordan Chambers. And then he started to talk about that because Chambers, for him, is what he was for me, represented the same thing. And you start talking about those relationships and how you grow, where they come from. And yeah, so it was just interesting. But at 50, I was working, man. Okay. So what you all, when I'm talking to you, to you and Charles, Larry, as a guy who ain't working no more. And that's why I call the columns on further reflection, because I now think about what I thought.
You know,
And
that is a very, very profound interpretation, because anybody that's ever tried a case knows that there are three cases: the case you intended to try, the case you tried, and the case you wish you put on. Win, lose, or draw. That's it. And those
right,
are the reflections that I mean, you just gave us number one what you intended to do in politics, and the brother at the bar told you, look, yeah, all that may be true, but and you found out in reality that these were the only choices that were there, and if with these choices, the
right,
best one for my people may not advance our interests, but it may protect our interests. So I mean,
right.
these are things and subtleties that I just don't think we fully appreciate. And it reminds me of a situation where I took a ride from one of our neighborhood, guys that loved my mother, but he was a gangster. And I'm sitting in the middle seat of him, between him and one of his partners that were describing a violent altercation the night before at Pier 75, where guns were drawn. And I interrupted him. Picked me up from the basketball courts at Persian, or I bummed a ride home. Actually, I think it was Heman Park because it was a longer ride. So I said, "Wait a minute, y'all had guns involved?" He looked at me with a level of disdain that you could only have for a person that's never been in the game, and said, "Partner, you're riding in danger right now." And that's the way the community has been, and we don't know it because we don't know the players and we don't know the game.
Right. All right. So it's growing and mature, and that's why no matter how talented you are and what your skill level is, you have to grow. You have to learn it. You have to mature into the player, and no matter what the game is that you're going uh, to be in, and that's why old guys, when you're young, if they think you got some talent and the grit that it takes to do this. And when you're young, saying stupid stuff, they just smile, okay?
It,
Because they say, well, that's all part of the process too,
that's,
okay? Uh, uh,
let me ask
a
you,
Congressman Clay.
let me ask you
Yeah, go
this,
ahead.
Mike Jones. When you look at the arc of his career, is there one or two things that or achievements that he was able to garner that could be seen as hallmarks? I know his consistency should be one, because just that the basis of what he stood for, and he stood on it with unwavering commitment. But are there any hallmark things that because and I'll give you an example. You can say whatever you want to say about Lacey, his son, but when you look at the fact that he secured that NGA for the city of St. Louis, and and his headquarters and the jobs that it may bring to the folks on the north side, that's a crowning achievement.
Okay, for me, what makes William L. Clay Sr. a transformational figure has nothing to do with anything he did in Congress. It has everything to do with him as a political leader in St. Louis. That's where he defined, that's where you feel and see his impact. And I would, he created, he took the ecosystem the infrastructure that Jordan Chambers created, expanded it, and defined the ecosystem for Black folks and opportunity. So think of it like this. Ain't no him, ain't no me. Because he created the dynamic that made me necessary for folks. That you had to have, I had the chance to be in the game because he redefined politics in St. Louis. So I would say about Bill Clay what Dizzy Gillespie said about Louis Armstrong, Kobe Bryant said about Michael Jordan. Ain't no him, ain't no me. Period. It ain't no more complicated than that. So if you want to know what it is, ain't no him, ain't no verbs.
So,
Okay. I can. Yeah. Okay.
and so he created a climate that created progeny that sat at the table and continued to garner resources for our community.
Right. That's that's what makes him transformational. There's a lot of guys who do a good job, and he did that fine, but that's not what made him great as a politician.
He set the structure
Delivering
and
the good, that's kind of
framework.
like the job. Right. So that's what that's what makes Jordan Chambers who he was. Okay. And the rest of us. So here, my basketball metaphor. Michael Jordan is a great player. Kobe Bryant is a great player. LeBron James is a great player. All three of these guys, all-time great players. Bill Russell is a transformational player. Wilt Chamberlain is a transformational player. The game changes because of them. Julius Erving is a transformational player. The game changed because of Dr. Day. Steph Curry is a transformational, revolutionary player. The game is now different because of Steph Curry.
What was the game like?
And it don't make Steph Curry better.
What was the game like before Mr. Clay?
Well, you have to say what the game was like before Jordan Chambers.
Before Mr. Chambers, then.
But well, I mean, first of all, everybody Black was a Republican. So in the 30s, Jordan Chambers created the Black Democratic Party. He took Black folks away from Republicans and delivered them to Franklin Roosevelt. And from that day on, if you were running for president, you came to St. Louis to see Jordan Chambers.
Wow.
Every black policeman was because of Jordan Chambers. You know, if you got from, I mean, literally, when I'm telling you, now obviously this is way before my time, but I was always fond of talking to old guy and not knowing the story. So I'm telling, and there are stories about somebody Black going to somebody white, say, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And the white boy would say, well, what did Pop say? Well, I don't know why you asking me if you ain't asking him. Okay. And I'll tell you, this is a Mike Jones story and William Clay and Bill Clay. I'm on the board of aldermen, and Vin Shamel asked me to run the St. Louis Housing Authority, and I said no the first time. And after about another year, you know, I talked to a couple, and I knew I don't think I want to do this as a career. And I had read Robert Moses' biography that Robert Cure wrote, The Power Broker. I said, oh shit, you know, That's the kind of impact. I want to do something like that. And so he asked me again, and the housing thought it was a wreck. And I said, yes, because I thought it was my opportunity to go run something that I could make an impact in. And the only two people who know about this is me and the mayor, me and Shankwell. And Vince and I are in his office. And we both circled back around because I wanted to see him, make sure he had changed his mind. He wanted to see me to make sure I hadn't changed my mind. So we're sitting in the office on the couches. We're not sitting at his desk. We sitting on the couches. And we're talking about it. It's August of 1984. And the March Democratic primary is going to be in March of 1985. And I would have been up for re-election as alderman, and he's up for re-election as mayor. And so we sitting there talking, and we're good. I'm going to do this. He wants me to do it, so that's done. And then he says, but I'm going to have to run this by Bill. And if Bill is okay with it, we'll do it now. If he ain't okay with it, we'll have to do it after the election. You'll have to really get reelected. We'll have to, and I got to get reelected. Now remember, Bill Clay ain't there. He don't even know this is going on. The mayor of the city of St. Louis said, but I'm going to have to talk, I'm going to have to run it by Bill. And by then, I wasn't that young, dumb kid no more. I understood. Okay. and he ran it by Bill, and Bill didn't have but one question, which was really the only question I had. What about Norman? Norman Say was the director of the Housing Authority at the time, kind of elderly, but Norman, friend of Bill's, but iconic figure. So Norman's got to be all right. You know, that you can make the move. Got to be all right.
Okay,
And
Mike Jones.
said, I'm taking
Mike
care
Jones,
of Norman. Norman's gonna be good.
Okay.
Huh?
Could you go back to what happened?
Say what?
To what happened with Norman, because you broke up a little bit.
Oh, okay. Vince said, I'll take care of Norman. Norman's gonna be good.
Okay.
So then and when Vince told Bill that, Bill said, okay, well, Mike's good then. Now I ended up at the housing authority. Not just for the civilians and the amateurs out there. They didn't have an RFP. The job wasn't, and the mayor and I had dinner with 4 of the commissioners one evening at the Missouri Athletic Club, and he said, Mike's go run the housing authority, and they said, okay, cool. And I went to the housing authority, and the rest is kind of history. Now, that's the impact that he had. Now, he's not there, okay? He don't even know this is going on. And he's the center of our conversation. And man, he got veto power over the decision. And he ain't even there and don't know about it.
But his decision impacted the betterment of our community. His decision not to intervene, and he had tentacles like that throughout the country in many cases.
For 30 years.
For 30 years. Wow. Dr. Alexander, you've been quiet.
So again, I would think that another way to look at this is that he went to Washington because of St. Louis, as opposed to doing whatever he was doing in St. Louis to go to Washington.
Right.
And I'm just sure folks don't understand it that way. I'm sure folks don't understand. Like they don't think that we get to shop and go to restaurants in St. Louis because William Clay was on the front lines of the fight for public accommodations. They think we got that stuff because of Dr. King. They don't think
Right.
that he was in core doing all this work. And in the midst of doing all of this work, he was understanding, he was coming to his own and learning all of these other things about uh, access access to and management of resources. And he turned that into a 30 plus year political career. But he did all of that for St. Louis, not to be in DC.
Right. And it's more like St. Louis sent him to D.C. rather than and in a whole lot of ways, he never left St. Louis. So that's what I'm saying. Newspapers in particular, the younger you get, you think of, well, he's a congressman. No, he was bigger than a congressman. Okay, congressman was his day job. Okay, but his calling was political leader. And what has happened to our politics is people run for office, but we have vacated the political leadership space. Okay, that the reality is whatever you got elected to do, you were elected to do it because ultimately you're a political leader. Okay, so so the notion of consultant and I'm all, and I don't mean this negatively, but I'm fairly contemptuous of today's politicians. They soft as hospital cotton, and you hear everybody running for. If you're running for the board of aldermen, the state representative, well, I got some consultants. When I started doing this, you had to put in your own work, and you had to make your. I mean, it was kind of like you got extended. You kind of the way what you had to do to get in the game, by definition, made you a player. So once you were on the inside, there's folks on the inside, and then there's y'all on the outside. And there are, for lack of a better word, even independent of party and race, people make professional accommodations to each other. Oh, you need that because you in the game, okay? And if you take care of the game takes care of you. And we've turned, I consider campaign consultants the equivalent of pimps. And I'm old school enough not to have any high regard for pimps. Okay? And they have polluted the game, and so yeah, the only thing that's as painful to watch as today's black politics is a regular season NBA game. Okay, they equally are painful, but I put them in that category. So this whole notion of and I'll tell you, when people talk about the money, Charles or Larry, have either one of you ever heard of a guy named Jesse Unruh?
I
I
have not.
I have. I don't think I.
Okay, I'll tell you who he was. He was the Speaker of the California Assembly, Speaker of the Assembly, when Jerry Brown's father was the governor. He was also chairman of the California Democratic Party. He's a major power broker. Because Congressman Clay stayed a committeeman for like 10 years while he was in Congress. So these guys were politicians on top of their government job. But and this was almost a running joke inside the Democratic Party back then. But somebody asked Jesse Unruh about the influence of money in politics. He said money don't have no influence. He said, and they basically asked him, what does he mean? He said, listen, you're not a politician, you're not a legislator until you can take their money, drink their whiskey, screw their women, and then vote against their bill. Yeah, I took the money, right? And the answer's still no. Now what? So the whole notion of where they gave us the money, of course they gave us the money because we this. What the money gets you is the meat. It don't get you shit else.
Gets you access.
That's all.
Yeah.
But my no is no.
Yeah, but
because I'm not gonna do that.
We can describe a lot of our modern day politicians as they do in
punk ass bitches is what they are.
I was going to say in Congo they would refer to them as Negros de Service, which is Negroes of service. Not to
but anyway.
But yeah, that is. So what should the takeaway be from Mr. Clay, from modern politicians, and for us as individuals that are working in the community right now? What it should be my takeaway at looking at not even the entire arc of Mr. Clay's legacy, but attempting to be of the same mindset. And I'm not going to say alignment, because some things are just building a fire that you can't replicate. But you need to get on the same note, or at least a note that is in concert with what Mr. Clay did. And how can we best do that now?
With that, and
Mike, you froze up.
I used to say,
Mike, you froze up.
Okay, I said okay. I said I struggle with that question, Larry, and I used to say, well, this now can be like that then, and I've come to the point that no, it can't. That people are products of their time. Like a wine is this wine this year is different than the wine next year because the soil was different, the barrels that it aged in and stuff. So all of it's unique. One of the things that we've lost, though, and each generation challenges the one ahead of it. Okay, I mean that's the other thing. When people say mentor and all of that ain't the way this thing goes. I mean, that politics is real simple business. You can have what you can take, you can keep what you can hold. Okay, it's yours as long as you got it. When somebody takes it from you, it's theirs now. It ain't yours no more. They didn't take yours. They took theirs. Because they got it, it's theirs. So you start to understand that this is the operational dynamic that you're in. It's only yours because you got it. If somebody takes it from you, it's theirs. And somebody's trying to take your shit all the time. Okay? So fundamentally, that's just the way this goes. It's a competition, and you got competitors. You don't have friends, but you might have allies. Okay, you may not have enemies, but you'll always have adversaries. Okay, and the whole thing is transactional. Okay, it ain't personal. It's just business. That I mean, we say that all the time and don't know what it means, but that's really what it means, man. Somebody said my mother once asked me when I was on the board of Alderman about some people. He said, "Do you like so and so? Or you like so?" I said, I don't have an opinion on them." She said, "Well, how can you not?" I said, "Because whether I like them or not ain't gonna have nothing to do with what I do." And the fact that when you personalize the shit, it just makes it clouds your business judgment. Okay, so you fundamentally don't get angry and don't get elated, and what you used to hear brothers say on the street, right? We cool, and somebody asks you, well, what about so and so? Well, he all right with me. Now that don't mean he all right. It just mean he all right with me. So you'll have to decide for yourself. So it's that kind of thing. But there was also a generational connection. Okay, that when you were a little boy, the equivalent of when you were the little boy coming into the schoolyard to learn how to play ball, there were some big boys there playing already. Okay, and they didn't let you, and you learned how to play from watching them, trying to get on the court with them. And in that process, you learned how to be a ball player. And then one day you looked up, you were a big boy. We've lost these intergenerational connections. And now you got younger generations with no understanding of anything but the moment they happen to be in, not tied to the past, not to relive the past, but just understand the flow of where the game, the game comes to you like this. Now you're gonna have to take it and do what you do with it, but this is where it is, where it's been. I'll kind of give you one. Congressman Clay, and this is a personal encounter again with me. I've just started doing this first couple of years. I'm doing it. I'm not an alderman or anything, but I think I'm smart and know what I'm doing. And there was a major state senate race between Ray Howard, who was a lawyer and a state senator, and Jet Banks. Jet was in the House. He ran against Ray. And it was one of those, everybody was kind of split and all that kind of stuff. So I was somewhere, and the congressman was there. That was the other thing. Politics then was, everybody was kind of in the same space. So I'm 25, 26 years old. He a congressman. And there's a discussion about the race between Jet and Ray. And I'm in the conversation. So is Bill Clay. And I said, "Oh, this race is too close to call." Congressman said, no, it ain't. Jet's gonna win by 600 votes. I said, I looked at the numbers, all that kind of stuff. So I get in an argument with him about the race. Okay. And he looked at me and he said, "Michael, I've been doing this for 25 years. If I tell you Jet's gonna win by 600 votes, he's gonna win by 600 votes. And I'm saying, I'm telling you, I done looked at this, and I think it's too close to call." And it's literally a couple of days before the election. So the election happens. Read the paper the next day. Jet and Ray, dead heat, damn near even. And I'm thinking to myself, see there, I know what I'm talking about. Huh. He might be the congressman, but I know what I'm talking about. But that was in the time when they counted absentee ballots after the election, after the day election. Because now they count them before, then they used to count them afterwards. 2 days later, they had counted the absentee ballots, yet beat Ray by 600 votes. So I just put that down in the book as another lesson. So, but again, it would be hard for somebody who's 25 now to have a story like that 50 years from now, because I'm 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 better at my craft because I had to go through all it. Wait a minute, I had to pledge to get into this fraternity. Okay, and there are the equivalent of board meetings when you pledge the right way. Okay, that you just don't fill out an application and send them a check. Okay, that ain't how this works. Okay, and if you survive hell, we can turn back tonight. You know, and then make a line. Somebody will say, "Welcome to the frat."
Well,
Same process.
well, Mr. Jones, I don't think that anyone will do a better job than what you just did this morning in recognizing and honoring Mr. Clay. And I want to publicly thank you again. Speaking of board meetings, my father-in-law was pinned with his Omega 75-year pin. And I want, like, as I have told you before, you couldn't stand in higher esteem with me, but I mean, you almost did by showing up and supporting your brother. Dr. Alexander, is there anything you want to add before we close out? Because I have nothing. I think we have, we have emptied the flask with Mr. Jones this morning, but I'm sure there is something beautiful that you can add.
Yep, just a couple of things. Hey, again, condolences to Mike Jones and everyone who uh, Congressman Clay touched. I know my father had a relationship with Clay. I know my nephew was able to go to college in part for free because of because of my father's relationship with Congressman Clay. Um, I
Did your
feel
did your
blessed
nephew did your nephew
for
have
growing up.
was your nephew a Clay scholar?
Yes.
Well, my mother-in-law interviewed your nephew because she was, depending on the year,
All right.
because that's what she did. She was his scholarship chairperson.
Yep. And so he was able to attend WashU and right time. And so, so, but, and that's kind of what I was saying. Like, I just don't think that people really understand the way that he touched the 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 city of St. Louis and the metropolitan area with um with his goal to represent the folks who wasn't getting represented. Those folks who needed representation, that's what he set out to do, and that's what he did. And I we have to do a better job of understanding that much of whatever it is that we actually do have the benefit to enjoy as citizens in St. Louis. It comes from the work of folks like we play. This thing wasn't just given to us. This thing didn't come to us because of whatever happened somewhere else necessarily, but because of the work that he put in and others like him. And whatever it is that we got through the fight.
And that's what structural integrity does. Structural integrity actually is done in silence. I mean, You enjoy the fact that your roof is not caving in, or that you don't have a leak in the building because of the vision of someone that you never met. You enjoy the wide lanes in the grocery store. Don't even understand that you're enjoying them. You just understand it's comfortable to shop there, because someone had the vision to have the structure and the integrity to do that. You enjoy fresh food because someone had the vision to do that. And it lulls you to sleep. And we fail to understand that these things are based on sacrifices, and they are man-made until a catastrophe occurs.
I I I write reports for people who need family and medical leave. I do that a few times out of the year, and I do it only for people that uh, I am clear are in need and are in distress. They're not simply trying to game the system, but I'm able to do that because he sponsored the bill. So that's one of my no bill, no Congressman Clay, no me moments. That there's a chunk of my business that's predicated on his political action.
Wow. Mike, please close us.
And I yeah, I want to say what you and Charles just said was really the essence of who he was, but I would suggest a whole generation of folks like him. When you think about the founding of the Congressional Black Caucus, and that was the first time that black folks had a collective national political voice, and they used that to define the agenda of the Democratic Party and national. I mean, and they understood that they were more powerful together than they were individually. And what saddens me is it was 13 at the beginning, maybe 16 of them. It's 56 black congressmen now, congress people now, and it don't look like they could fix a parking ticket, let alone sponsor and get past the
Civil
what
rights.
Charles was just referencing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I was blessed to be in the forest. Basically, I was blessed to see giants do this work, which which for me made me say I want to be that. I mean, I didn't want to pay. I wanted, and I'll say this: if and I've said this before, I don't say this loudly, but I never literally till now quite connected it to him. I remember saying when I was just starting to do this, I might not have even been on the board of aldermen. I said, "Here's what I want. I want that if you're going to do something in St. Louis one day, somebody's going to have to say, well, what did Mike Jones say?" Now, the answer could be screw Mike Jones, but you got to count for me. And I can probably say at this point, I had not thought of it like this. I got that from watching him, not from knowing him. To say, yeah, but it's like a young kid watching somebody older play ball. And you say, that's how I want to play. I want want to be a player like that. And I think our breakdown in community, disconnection, is we got too many young people who've never seen what it means to be that dude when you're a black man or a black woman. That you can be that. You can be that. Right? Because I saw him do it, and we learn by example. Okay, you don't know how to be a lion unless you see some lions who are wrong. If there's somebody raises you in the zoo, you raise a lion cub in the zoo, he don't know how to be no lion because he never saw it. And I really never thought about it. And what I said about me, I thought about it. I knew that was always my driver, but I never connected it directly to the men I saw that said, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
Well, Mike Jones, Dr. Charles Alexander, I don't think anything needs to supplement what you just stated. That was the perfect, um, I would say, summation, and not a conclusion, but the summation of where we are today, because we are, plan on making history today, if it's the Lord's will, and we live. And I just want to thank you for everything that you've done, and thank you for having the wherewithal and the discipline to um, to navigate these political waters and these humanitarian waters to the extent that you have, and sharing that with us. So we're going to conclude today at the level set, and once again we honor the life of William L. Clay, and deepest condolences to his children. When I first went to D.C., Michelle helped me it'll help me in that transition and beginning my practice, Bill Clay's daughter. And I will forever be grateful for that. Once again, life well lived. It's never enough time. But we thank you.